Hi Peralta first graders, it's Mr. Davis. Welcome back to my virtual classroom. Today's song is called Do You Believe in Magic? It's by the Lovin' Spoonful. I'm going to start with the bee joke, of course. The joke is, where do bees go after they get married? The answer, on their honeymoon. This week, we are going to write a story about a bee. You will write a fiction story where a bee is the main character in the story. Also, this bee is going to be telling the story from their perspective. So, you are literally going to write a make-believe story. So I'm going to clarify what I mean with some examples of real books. Some of the books we've already read, so you're familiar with them. So the first thing I want to clarify is the difference between a nonfiction book and a fiction book. Nonfiction books, let me turn off the music. Nonfiction books teach you information. They teach you facts about about the world. So this one's teaching you all about honeybees. So that's definitely a nonfiction book. A fiction book is telling a story. It usually has a problem, there's a solution, there are characters, and there's a beginning, middle, and end. So those are some examples. And I'll show you a few more just so you really understand. So this book here, From Bee to Honey, take a guess which one it is. The answer is nonfiction. You can tell almost immediately from the cover. If you see real photos, it's generally going to be a nonfiction book. How about this one? Which one do you think it's going to be? Fiction or nonfiction? That's right, you got to write nonfiction. Lots of information about bees, real photos, teaches you stuff. That makes it nonfiction. What about this one? The bee sneeze. You can tell by the fact that that bee looks like a cartoon character. It's going to be fiction, so it's a make-believe story. There's a problem, there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. This one here, Keeping Bees. That's right, it's nonfiction. This one here, Bees in Their Hives. It is nonfiction. What about this bee that you wrote about the life cycle of a honeybee, where it has pages about the queen bee and pages about eggs? That's a nonfiction. The other bee, which I don't have the other book rather that I don't have a copy of, the step book that talks about drones and queens and worker bees, is also a nonfiction. So we're going to be writing a fiction book about bees. So that means it's going to be more like these kinds of books. And so there's another category we have to talk about. So we know it's going to be a fiction book that you're going to write. But there's different ways to write a fiction book. And one way is called third person, and another way is called first person. There is also a second person, but we're not going to talk about that. We're just talking about these because they're the most popular kinds. So a third person book is when a narrator tells the story, and you'll often see words like she, he, it, they. And then a first person book is when a character is telling the story, and they're actually in that book. So that has words like I, we, me, my, and some other words like that. So let's see which kind of category these books. They're both fiction books. The question is, are they third person or are they first person? And here's this one here. I'm just going to review. It says here, a bumblebee said with a sneeze, I think I'm going to sneeze. With the bee. Here a spider appeared from thin air and swallowed the bee then and there. This one is third person, because the person who's telling the story is not actually in the story. They're somewhere over here, some sort of narrator who's looking down and telling the story for you. And so they're seeing all of these events happen, but they're not an actual character in the book. So this makes this book a third person fiction book. Let's see about this one here, the spelling bee. So here it says, buzz, buzz. These bees are busy. They work hard. They are busy making honey. Work, work, work. So I see a word like they. And then on this other page, I see this word here, he That's another word. That makes it third person. That means the person telling the story is a narrator that's outside the book. Like I envision there's someone over here who's just telling the story, but they are not a character in the book. So you'll notice that both of these books are third person, and there are no first person books. I actually don't know of any first person B books. I don't happen to have any. But you're going to make your own first person B book. It's going to look like this. We're actually going to make this book tomorrow, but I'm just going to show you. It'll have some sort of string to hold it together, and then it opens up like an accordion and closes, and then you can tie it back with string or ribbon. So it's going to be a book that's in this first person category. It's not going to be like this. To show you what I mean about better understanding first person, I'm going to show you a picture that talks about perspective, because this is the next word I'm going to show you. So when there's a third person story, the perspective is from the narrator. But when there's a first person story, the perspective can be from any character you choose to write about. So we're going to talk about the difference. So here, for instance, is a picture of a person who's stranded on a desert island, and there's a person on a boat, and they both have their hands raised, and the person on the island is yelling out, "Boat!" So that means from his perspective, he is probably thinking, "Thank goodness I'm saved. I'm not stranded on this desert island. I can finally get off this island." And then here's another picture with a different perspective. It's the perspective of the person on the boat looking at the island, and he says, "Land!" That means from his perspective, he's tired of being on that boat. He's probably been in the ocean for weeks, and when he sees land, he's thinking, "Thank goodness, I found land. I don't have to be on this boat anymore." So they both are telling a story, but one is from the perspective of the person on the island, and one is from the perspective of the person on the land, on the boat rather. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be telling a story about a bee, and it's going to be from the bee's eyes. You're basically telling the story from what the bee can see. So here's an example of what your book might have. It might have this funny little picture of a bee. This bee is collecting pollen in his pollen basket. And this right here is a predator of a bee. It's called a bee eater bird. It's hard to say, bee eater bird. And so of course he likes to eat bees. And from the bee's perspective, if he were in this situation, from his eyes, he might say to himself, "Oh my gosh, I need to get out of here. There's a bird that's going to eat me. Help, help. Help me, friends, help me. I need to get out of here." That would be from his perspective. If I were to write the story from the bird's perspective, it might be something like, "Yummy, yummy, I'm so hungry. I can't wait to catch that yummy, delicious bee and have him for my breakfast." So the story that you're going to focus on is from the bee's perspective. And so to clarify, it's going to be a fiction story. It's make-believe. It's going to be a first-person story, and it's going to be from the perspective of a bee. So you're not going to use words in your story like these kinds of words, she, he, it, they, etc. You really want to try to use words like I, we, me, my, because the bee is the one that's telling the story. And so that clarifies things a little bit, I hope. And to give you another example, here's a book that you've probably heard of, Hi, Fly Guy. Fly Guy is actually written in third person. So when he writes this, the author wrote this book, he put down the following words. A fly went flying. He was looking for something to eat, something tasty, something slimy. A boy went walking. He was looking for something to catch, something smart, something for the amazing pet show. So he's writing from a narrator perspective, is telling the story down below. If you were to write from the fly's perspective and you wanted to make it first person, if you wanted to make the Fly Guy book like these cards are indicating, it would say something like, I was flying I was so hungry, I was looking for something to eat. I saw this yucky old dead fish, it looked tasty. I saw something really slimy. I saw this boy opening his door, and he had all these funny little tools. I was wondering, what was he trying to do right there? And then, bonk, I ran right into him. So that would be the kind of story you would write, where there's a lot of I in the story, because you're telling the story from the bee's perspective, just like this is what I just said was telling the story from the fly's perspective. So your story could be something like this, where a bee meets a friend, or a bee is being chased away from an enemy, chased away by an enemy rather. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do some pre-writing so we can get our ideas down for the story. So we know what kind of story it's going to be like, but we want to get our ideas down for the structure of the story. So you're just going to need a plain old piece of paper, and you're going to fold it, hamburger fold, then you're going to open it up, and then fold it hot dog fold. So you're going to have, after you're finished, you'll have 4 equal size rectangles. Then you're going to get something that's circular. So here I have this can that's a good circle, or this vitamin container works really well. Anything you have in your house that's circular. And I'm going to put the circle object right in the middle. You can see where the middle is because it's where that point is. I'm going to put this circle right in the middle, and then I'm going to trace with a pencil or a pen. I'm using a pen so you can see it a lot better, but you don't need to use a pen. You can just use a pencil. So you're going to trace the circle that's in the middle, and then I'm going to draw a line on that fold up at the top, but don't draw it in the circle. And draw a line on the fold part on the bottom, but again, I'm not drawing in the circle. And then over here too. So now we have these 5 little sections. Then I'm going to write different things in each section. So the title of your story is going to go right here. This is the title. Again, our bee book is going to actually look like this. The story that you write will be in this book, which we'll learn how to make tomorrow. But for today, you're going to get your ideas down. This is the idea paper. Over here in this box, you're going to write down your ideas for the beginning of the story. So it could be, for instance, a bee is pollinating a flower, a bee's in his hive, something like that. That's the beginning. Over here is for the middle of the story. So this would be perhaps where a mean character starts chasing after the bee or trying to eat the bee, depending on what kind of story you want to write. And this is the end of the story. And then right here is the setting of the story. Setting means, where does the story take place? Is it in a garden? Is it in the hive? Is it in the city? Is it in your neighborhood, in your backyard? So that's that part. You can either write words or draw pictures. So if you're not really sure what, you can just start drawing pictures of what you think the beginning might be, the middle and the end, the title, what you think the title would be, and the setting. There's also going to be work that you can do on the other side. This side does not require a circle. You're just going to make those 4 boxes. So I'm tracing over the folds, but I don't need the circle part. And on this side, I'm going to write, these are some big words here, but you're awesome enough to know what they mean. This first word is the word protagonist. So protagonist is a really fancy way of saying the main character in the story. And it's usually the main good character in a story. So I'm going to put main bee character in parentheses. But a really fancy way of saying that is protagonist. Don't tell your parents that big word, because they'll start thinking that you are smarter than they are, and they'll get embarrassed. So protagonist is the main character. This is where you're going to draw what you think your bee character is going to look like. So for instance, here's an example of what a bee character could look like. When Ted Arnold made Fly Guy, he decided that his fly character would look like this. Or when this person made this story, they decided their bee character would look like this. So you get to choose however you want your bee character to look. Here's another one. They made this one look kind of human-like. You get to make any way you want. And then this word over here is another big word. And it kind of sounds like the other big word. It's called antagonist. And the antagonist is usually the bad person in the story, the villain. So in this story here, oops, let me find it. In the story where, here it is in this picture here, the protagonist would be this bee, and the antagonist would be the bird. So the antagonist is the character that's going to cause problems for your bee character. That could be a skunk, because skunks like to eat, like to attack honey hives, beehives. It could be some sort of bird. It's your choice. Over here in this box is the problem of the story. So this is what happens. What does this character do to that character? Does it try to eat the bee? Does it make fun of the bee? That's the part where you put this information. And then the last part is the solution. And that means how did this problem get fixed? What got fixed? For instance, in this one where I was telling you about this bee getting chased by the bird, that would be the problem. And then the solution might be that a bunch of bees came and flew in the face of the bird, and the bird got scared and flew away. So the protagonist would be this character, antagonist would be this character. The problem would be that the bird is trying to eat the bee, and then the solution would be that all the bee friends came and chased away the bird. That's one option. So for today, you're just going to fill out this paper. Your idea for the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, the end of the story, the setting, which means where the story takes place, your title idea, and then the main bee character gets drawn here, the main antagonist character gets drawn here, the problem of the story, and the solution of the story. And that's what you're going to be working on today. And then tomorrow, we will learn how to make this book, and we'll learn more about what it means to write a story with fiction from the perspective, first-person perspective of a bee. So again, you're going to write a story about a bee. You're going to put down all your ideas here, and once you have this down, you'll be ready for making this book. I'm going to play that Do You Believe in Magic song because it has believe, and you're going to be writing a make believe story, and I will end with a joke. The joke is, what do you call a bee who eats too much honey? The answer, chubby. And with that bad joke, I bid you farewell. I'll see you tomorrow virtually. It was nice teaching you. Have a delightful day. Bye.